Hi there, it's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, WomenOnTV.tv, iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. And so it's all about this unknown guy who's done all of these great things, one of the best players out there. Steve, who are you and where you coming from?
I'm Steve Postell, and a native New Yorker, but I live in Los Angeles. And I think I'm mostly here because, aside from all the other crazy things I've done, I'm in a band called The Immediate Family right now.
Let's talk about this. I love Leland. Leland's been on our show a couple times, and I'm doing Wobbly and a couple of other guys Thursday and Friday. It'll be
Great.
interesting because I know Danny, the director of this. I love the Wrecking Crew. I
Yeah.
love things like that. Talk about this project. How did this come about, and then what's been happening with you in general?
Well, the band is called The Immediate Family. And in case anybody doesn't know, it's myself and four of the greatest session backup musicians, producers, whoever picked up their instruments, and that's Danny Korchmar on guitar and vocals, Waddy Wachtel on guitar and vocals, Russ Kunkel on drums and percussion, and Leland Sklar on bass. And together, the four of them have probably, I'd say, have played on over 1,000 records. Probably half of the, I'm not 1,000, 10,000 records, and half of those are the greatest records ever made. So it's a real special treat and honor to be included in that. And it came about. Danny, as some of you may know, aside from growing up with James Taylor and playing in that early band and the Flying Machine with him, Danny became a really prolific co-writer and producer. And so, along the years of working with Jackson Browne and James Taylor and Carole King and Billy Joel and all these people, he ended up writing all these great songs. Many of them were hits.
Yeah.
And Danny and I went to Japan with a different project to play. And around that time, he got approached by a Japanese label to make a record of his hits, but with him singing. So Danny called his favorite people in the world, which is Russ and Leland and Waddy, and I'll throw myself in there. And we went into Jackson Browne's studio and cut this record of Dirty Laundry, All She Wants to Do Is Dance, Somebody's Baby, all these classic Danny songs with him singing, our arrangements. And I think, at least from my standpoint, by the end of the first day, I know I was feeling. I think they were too. Like, wow, this is like the greatest band in the world. We should be a band, not just make this one record. So that's really how it started.
Now, let me ask you this. So I've talked to the World Class Wrecking Crew. I've talked to the Funk Brothers. And so just those two along with Motown and then all the Los Angeles, LA instruments, you guys are the third, not the third best, but you guys are in that group. There isn't any other group in the world like that, which makes you guys very, very unique. So for me, I hadn't talked to you before, so it's an honor to talk to you because wow, when you think about all the people that you guys have performed with and that friendship, you just don't want to play with anybody else. You have a camaraderie there. You got that rhythm. I call it the rhythm section. You got that stuff there. I'm that drummer. You know, when you have that beat going on, you don't want to mess it up, do you?
You can't. Matter of fact, if the groove and the beat isn't there, forget it. Throw it out. It ain't worth it. And we have the best rhythm section, for my money, in the world. If you talk about it, if you have a great song and it's in the rock and roll or in the pop mentality, not the best rhythm section in the world is Russ Kunkel and Leland Sklar. That's my opinion, and we have it in the band.
Let me ask you this. What do you think of Lee's new book?
I'm in it, so I love it. No,
Exactly. Were you surprised that he was going to put that together throughout all the years he's been doing that, or no?
we've been telling him to make it into a book for years. Everyone knows, like, when are you going to do? When are you going to do the book? And I wasn't sure he was ever going to do it, but with COVID and the extra time and not touring, he just did it. He just put it together. For those of you who don't know, Leland Sklar has been many years ago on tour. I think with Phil Collins. I'm sure he'll tell you the story.
Yep.
He at the end of the tour he takes pictures of the crew just to remember the tour, and one guy went like that to him. One of the crew guys, and it was so cool to him. There was something so fun about his expression. He started taking pictures of everyone he knew doing this, and it became a thing. And he has over 10,000. I think there's 6,000 in the book, but I know he has 10,000 photographs, and we're talking from people on the street to very, very prominent, famous people. I think only two people have turned him down, and I won't mention their names over the years. Like, no, I don't do that. I literally only two people. But so there's something it's completely unique, and it's very Leland, and it's become. I think it's on the New York Times bestseller list. So
Exactly. And I really, really love that when it comes to things like that, because it's unique, it's different. But if you know him, he's a very interesting, just really down to earth guy. It was an honor to have him come to my studio and be on the air. He came with Kenny Arnoff
oh, nice.
studio. And I'm gonna have you come down based on if you want to leave. You know, we do everything small, it's tight. They really like it because they didn't know what to expect. They didn't even know it was there. And it was fun because I think the audiences are getting a chance to see you guys in a whole different way. Not only is it unusual for you guys to be able to talk like this, some of you guys, like Scott Page, have been doing your podcasting now, which I think is pretty cool. And then so now you guys kind of know what it's like for us to be doing this for so many years, just as long as you guys have been playing, your instruments. I think that's pretty cool. And welcome to the part of what we do.
Yeah, It's been very interesting that the one thing that was a little difficult with our band, getting it all together, was that everybody was on tour half the year. So we'd have to go, okay, so Russ is out with Lyle from this date to this time, and then Leland's out with, Phil Collins, and I'm out with Eric Anderson, and then Waddy's out with Stevie Nicks. We're trying to, so we'd look at it, we had this complicated schedule, and then we go, there's 2 weeks, we're all here, so we're going to book some gigs in those 2 weeks. And it was hard to have meetings with the management. I think they were even a little frustrated, like, we love this band, but we can never get you guys. And COVID hit, and all of a sudden we're all just available. So it made it very easy and accessible for us to do work and we have a meeting every Friday. I mean, we used to have a meeting every 3 months. We have a meeting every Friday, same time with the management. We've been able to do these music videos and make 2 EPs and 1 record, and we're starting another record, and we mixed 2 live shows and got those out there. So in a strange way, as much as we miss, and we really do miss being out there playing, but we've been able to be extremely productive during this time and take advantage of your medium, which is that I don't have to be in where you are. You could be anywhere. Maybe you're on Mars with the lunar or the moon or something.
It's funny about that is, and I joke about this with people, but I was serious when I started at October 3rd of 2018. I saw this coming. That's when I sent out the very first email of all the stuff that we were doing. So I was able to change everything around, tighten everything up, get to where we were. And I felt it when I was in last February 2nd, when I was in Miami for Super Bowl weekend. It just felt strange. And I left that Sunday. I didn't even go to the game. I left that Sunday, went back to Vegas. I'm like, it's coming. I can just feel it. And then my last interview was at the Grammy Museum downtown LA with he brought Brazilian Sergio Mendes. There was me, the director John Schoenfeld, and his wife. 4 of us in the green room. We had the whole Grammy Museum to ourselves. And as I walked out at 10 after 9, NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, the Lakers were just getting out. I said, here it is. This is what I've been for everything for. Jumped on the mega bus with my Segway and went back to Vegas. And at that point, like, okay, now I can tighten everything up. I'm so happy that you guys have been able to get together, do your thing. Yeah, it sucked not being able to tour, but you wouldn't have been able to get everything going this way either. Because after 18, everything's going to start to slowly but surely open up. And if you hadn't gotten all your stuff done, everybody's going to be on tour just like that real soon, sometime after October. And then
I hope so.
Everybody's going to be out there,
I hope so. I mean, there's terrible news every day about these new variants and this and that, but I just want to get out. I just want to get out there, and then plus we've had this record in the can. We finished it before COVID hit, and the movie you mentioned, Denny Tedesco, Tommy Tedesco's son,
Yep.
directed a wonderful film that you mentioned called The Wrecking Crew, which was this which was a retrospective and a view of the great session players who played on many of the hit records in the '60s, most of them really. Uh, and he was looking for for his next project, and that really the next wave was guys like those guys in my band. So it was a natural progression for him to make this documentary, and because we all had the next set of experiences of what it's like to be a musician and a studio player and so on. But that has been delayed. So everything got pushed, and now we're all hoping that we're on the cusp of getting the movie out, getting the record out, going back on the road, etc.
It is very good. I mean, I remember talking to Regal Theaters going back to 2014, 15 when I was finding movies for Hollywood Film Festival. And I kept saying, you guys got to have to change everything around when it comes to your theater going experience. They were experienced with the lounge chairs and I really want to help independent film. And they didn't want to mess with anything. And then obviously when COVID hit, look where they are now. And I'm still calling them. I'm saying, hey, I tried to warn you guys just got to change everything around because this is the new way of doing stuff. And for me, Steve, when I tell them, hey, I've got 7 million views a day and counting right now. However, the real number is going to be 20 to 25 between now and April 15th. So when I've got more than you guys and you guys are locked down and we're just kicking ass right now, and I can talk to people like you, my whole job is to get that word out to a different audience that they may not be reaching, outside that world. And then, you've been to NAMM. We've done our live shows at NAMM. I hope NAMM will be there next year at that same time. We hope. But I do know they'll start getting on the road slowly but surely. And I think that'll be great. I can't wait for you guys to get out there and start doing something because you guys got so much more to give the world,
Well, it's a very different experience. And playing live and the live audience and the interaction, there's nothing like it. We're doing virtual stuff. There's a big conference called the Folk Alliance International, which happens every year, which is about 4,000 musicians and maybe 1,000 to 2,000 industry managers, producers, record people, radio people, more in the acoustic bluegrass folk world. But I've been going to that for we went to Montreal, we went to New Orleans, went to Kansas City, Memphis. This year I'm playing tonight virtually. We're doing it virtually. So I missed technology. I think you got to stay with the curve. It doesn't mean we don't want to go play live, but a lot of the stuff that we're doing now and experiencing what we can do virtually is going to stay. And to not get with it, to not understand how it works, I've got my lights, I've got my interfaces. I can, because it's just like the whole analog digital thing. For
Exactly,
so
yeah.
many years. The old guys were like, it's got to be analog, it's got to be analog, and then it was okay. I'll get Pro Tools, but it's got to be all outboard analog gear. And I remember the last solo record I made, no, two solo records ago. So that was about 9 years ago when I was looking to see who was going to mix it. And at that point, half the guys were still, no, I use all analog effects, but half the guys, really the great guys, Ed Cherney and Nate Kunkel and all these guys, no, I'm all in the box now. And well, if those guys are doing it all digitally, that's good enough for me. So there's a take from the old stuff. We still want to do concerts, but we want to keep making videos and keep doing interviews like where we don't go somewhere and take advantage of the way the world changes. You gotta roll with it, I think.
Well, you're correct because also, like I said, you're reaching out to a whole audience where you may not even had time because it's unless you've gone on the road, and I've gone on the road not only with my friends on the adult side, but as an orchestra band, I've toured as a drum and bugle corps during the summers. It's tough and it goes quickly, but unless you've done that, you really don't understand what your world is like. And then when you come home and providing you have a family, you just want to chill out a little bit. And then the itch starts coming in after 2 or 3 weeks. You're ready to go back out because you had a little bit of rest, This time, I tell people, it gave them a chance to write those hit songs that haven't been recorded yet. Now that everybody's writing, whether it's a screenplay, a book, doing their new podcast shows, you have a whole new audience that you guys are tapping into. And that's a great thing for you guys.
Well, we've been making these videos And since the COVID started, we have a quarter of a million views, and we had 0 views 10, 11 months ago.
Exactly.
And that's a lot. That's a and the thing is that going out on tour is great, but so you're playing to places 500 people. That's 500 people. Whereas we can reach thousands and thousands of people. So I want to do both, but I think that a lot of this stuff will a lot of the way people have used technology is going to stay.
Yep.
Some professions are changed forever. For example, therapy. Since all the therapists started doing therapy in these formats, a lot of them got rid of their offices. They're like, well,
Exactly.
like, and the client's like, hey, I'm still seeing you. Why should I get in my car and have to drive? This is great, and they can see more people. So that's an industry that probably has really changed forever.
Yeah, my friend, she works on the sex side of stuff, Dr. Nancy Pierce. So I mean, she's never stopped. The only problem is she would take cruises to hedonism or Jamaica and stuff like that, and she couldn't go, but her business tripled. And I kept telling
Mm.
people, you know what? You got to take advantage of this stuff because, as you were just saying, and I only go by views. I don't go by followers. I always tell them you can always unfollow someone. You can always unlike something. You can always unsubscribe, but you can't unview a view. And with that, those views are great because those people who viewed you guys virtually, they're going to come out and watch you guys in live performance at that point. And that's a great thing. And then, people like, I have 13 co-hosts. They're all women and we all like each other. And then I rotate them in like a basketball team. And, we get different hits and they have their own brands. And one girl has over 3 million views by herself just because she's been on every show for 6 years with me. So you know what that's like to be in like that hit band touring for like 6 years going across country. And that's a great thing because we get to spread your word even more. And the fact that I like Denny and I like Leland, I get to promote you guys forever because it's a film. I love
Well, we really appreciate it, and but in the end, I mean, the truth is, well, I love recording, love to write, but there's nothing like being in a band like this and being on a stage. Nothing even really comes close. That's the real truth.
talk
So,
about the filming aspect that Danny was putting together on this to make that film. What was that like for you?
well, Denny, I think the way that they're constructing the film now, we haven't seen any of it really, or the edit. Uh, there's a few factions of it. There's archival footage, and there's lots of archival footage of everyone. So I think he's got old stuff, with Waddy up there with and Linda Ronstadt's band, all these archival, everybody playing with different people. Then there's the interviews, and it's pretty amazing. They got James Taylor, Carole King, Jackson Brown, Linda Ronstadt, I think Don Henley, so on and so forth. So they've got some wonderful, wonderful interviews. That's one section. Then there's interviews with us individually and as a group, and then there's live footage of us playing. And Denny's great at putting all of that, making a cohesive statement out of it, and he'll make a story out of it. That's the idea. Is what's the story here? And I think the story is after the Wrecking Crew days, the industry opened up, it changed, and a different kind of musician came in and started making records, and we're still, and the fact that we're still doing it, we're still not only still actively making records, writing songs, but we actually got together in a band and we're doing it in a very fresh way right now.
And that's a great thing because Danny he's a really good filmmaker, and I don't think he gets enough credit. But what made it for me during the lockdown? This is a lot of us movie reviewers. We were used to going to screenings all the time, running around. We might have one in Santa Monica and we have one in Beverly Hills. But we started getting into getting all the links sent to us now. So now we were watching more. I've got 3 computers that are in front of me, and I do
Yeah.
it this way because I might be watching a movie while I'm doing an interview, doing something like this. But this is the telecommunications you were just talking about. And that's what everybody has to do now because a lot of those businesses aren't going to be around. However, the one good thing I liked, I got a chance to catch up on music docs that I was missing. I got a chance to see
Mm.
a little bit of Steely Dan, which I thought was great. I rewatched the Journey one, which I thought
Well,
was
I've just,
good. Yeah. And with
well,
things
that,
like that, they were really good.
there's some great ones. The Bee Gees one is just fantastic.
the best documentary before this one that just came out, that I forgot the director who did it. That was one of the best documentaries I've ever seen on the Bee Gees, because I'm like, how many people have seen this one? This was like 4 years ago I saw the
Oh, oh,
one,
I see.
and it was really good. And like, more people need to see this. And so that's why I love things like this, because while you guys are still here, we need to soak up every informational, every interview, every show that you guys have done, because all the people who've been passing away the last 4 months, these are icons. These are people I interviewed that we'll never be able to see and talk to again. And that's very sad.
Well, I'm really glad that Denny Tedesco again, who's making this film, uh, is doing it because just as a fan of music, when we sit around after a gig, we're in Japan having food. The stories that we've all lived are pretty intense,
Yeah.
and 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 really have a lot of history of what happened in music. Just the five of us sitting around talking, and I think that I'm really thrilled that Denny is going to capture a lot of it, just to have it preserved, really.
And that's why I love them, because the last 5 years, I think of the rock docs. They've been, again, Queen was one of my favorite bands. I was so lucky that I've seen Freddie Mercury. I was a ticket scalper in Hartford, Connecticut. I was like one of the first black ticket scalpers, and that's what made me go see a lot of rock bands. I'll never forget my very first concert. My friends kidnapped me. I went to an all-white high school. They say, hey, for my birthday, they kidnapped me and took me to the Hartford Civic Center. I didn't know where I was going. I go, we've been driving for an hour. Where am I going? You're going to a concert. I am. What concert am I going to? We're going to tell you when you get there. It turned out to be Ted Nugent. I saw Ted Nugent. It was sold out, and it was the Great White Buffalo tour. And I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm the only black guy here out of 20,000 people. And I was on the floor, and I was like, this is pretty cool. That's what turned me on to that. And see if you'll get a kick out of this. My three favorite songs aren't R&B or rap songs. It's Ain't Talking About Love by Van Halen. I've told Eddie and David this, and they were happy that a black guy loves their song. It's its number one song. My second one was Let Me Go Rock and Roll Like Kiss. So, I had a chance to talk to Gene and the family, and his son didn't even know what the song was, because when he did Family Jewels. And the third one was Hey Jude. And then I get into R&B at that point. So you guys left a lasting impression on me, who grew up in an all high school in East Lyme, Connecticut, who ended up scalping tickets to rock concerts. And that's where my history goes back to stuff.
See, I had the reverse of your experience. I grew up in Manhattan, in New York, and one of my best friends was a drummer named Kenwood Denard, who ended up playing with Miles Davis and Sting and a lot of great Jaco Pastorius, incredible drummer. But at 13, he was already playing in this big band, and he said, "We're opening for James Brown at the Apollo. You should come. You should come as my guest." And I think, the only white guy at the Apollo. And I had the other experience, like, wow, this is really cool, and got to see James Brown and because I was very heavily influenced by R&B and blues and all that, and I got to see a lot of that growing up in New York City.
All right, so Steve, the fact that you got a chance to go to the Apollo, I still haven't been to the Apollo, and you got a chance to see James Brown. Again, that movie James Brown was great, and then having Mick Jagger putting his touch on that. Again, this is where music comes around and brings everybody together, and I love that aspect of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, now the Apollo is very upscale and everything, but in 1969, 70, when I went, it was just the best, man. It was I mean, I use the word, but from the soulful from here, it was just what an experience. What an experience. Life changing, actually. Not only to see James Brown, but to see him at the Apollo with everyone going insane. His people going, like his real hardcore lovers of him just going out of their minds was really something else.
Whatever happened to the drummer once he took you to that? Where did he go on to? He played with all these other bands also?
Oh yeah, he's a professor at Berkeley. He's a phenomenal drummer. But he was played with Mike Stern and with Jaco, and
Yeah.
Miles and Sting and all these people, and he's a full time. He may be the head of the drum department or full time. Kenwood Denard, but he and I, you know, we were there weren't a lot of musicians in my school, so Kenwood, we were turning each other on to a lot of music. He turned me on to Sly and the Family Stone. You know, he said, "You got to hear this," and we'd sit and I'd go, "Oh my God, this is," and then I'd play him like, you know, other stuff, and so we've known each other a long time, and those those experiences stay with you forever. You know, that's
Exactly.
I do feel that young people are getting cheated not just by COVID and not being able to go out, but just in general. That you know, I growing up in New York City, I saw everyone. I mean, everyone. I saw Duke Ellington's band, and I saw old blues, but from Doc Watson to Ellington to Al Green. It was just all there all the time, and I grew up thinking that, oh, this is normal. You get to go see the best music in the world every weekend.
And then you start to travel outside of New York and you realize, well, no, it's not normal. Everybody would love to see what you saw with your eyes, you know?
It's not normal, and now it's not. Now it's not happening anywhere. You know,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, there was no karting. There was no. I was 13 years old. I was going to the Fillmore East to see whoever I wanted. There was no like, oh, you're only 13, you can't come in. It was a very different world. Yeah, very great for. One of the things that we all share in the band, that some of the guys are a little older than me, but we all share that we grew up in an unbelievable time to hear and see music. Unbelievable time. Probably a real renaissance. I don't know if it'll ever be repeated. Something else will happen someday, but there were like 15 years that was just an education, and that will prompted us to be musicians, informed us on what it meant to play music, and will stay with us forever. I hope we can carry on the tradition to some extent.
You will be able to. You'll be able to tell the history because that's important because now a lot of these millennials and G and X, Y, Z generation, all they have is the albums. And the good thing is that they love listening to the albums the way it was meant to listen to it, which is great. That's a good thing. And so, and finally, they get a chance to hear your stories and stuff. I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, there is the YouTube thing is cool. You can go. You can. I'm always, all of us. Last night I'm watching Albert King stuff that videos I'd never seen because stuff keeps archive stuff keeps popping up, and I think it's incredible now that you can have that experience, but it's not the same as going to the show.
Right.
So, Chick Corea just died,
Oh,
and
yeah.
but I went to the Beacon Theater and to the film and saw Return to Forever
Yeah.
a number of times. Well, being in that room, what happens when the air is moving and the speakers and the energy, and you're watching the musicians interact in a real time way, it can't be duplicated in a two-dimensional screen. It's good, and I'm glad it's out there, but it's not the same.
You have a couple favorite recording studios that you played in that's your favorite, and if you do, where would they have been?
Well, I spent my formative time when the other four guys were out here. I was in New York, so we have different studio experience, even though we all played it. But so for me in New York, there was the Power Station,
Yeah.
Electric Ladyland. There was my first record I ever made was at a place called Media Sound, which was in an old church, and a lot of great records got made there. The main drum room was had the big church, the vaulted ceiling, and they had a mic that was 50 feet up. That was the room mic, and there was a special sound. And uh, but the other guys played in all the Los Angeles, the Capitol, and all the classic studios here. I was really in New York until I didn't start coming out here until the late '80s, early '90s.
Now one of the things about coming, being that true New Yorker coming out, not everybody who comes from New York likes Los Angeles. How long did it take you to get accustomed to the LA scene because you were around New York? We had everything. It's different night and day.
Well, a couple things. I started coming here for projects in the 80s and to produce something or to work on a film. I just had a great time. I some people don't. I gravitated towards it. I don't mind driving. I actually, to be honest with you, I'd rather drive than get on a subway. I
Yeah.
feel more it's my car. I'm in control. I can eat a sandwich. I can do whatever. Listen to the radio, talk on the phone. So I always liked coming here a lot. And when an opportunity arose in about 2004, my friend Steve Ferroni, who's the drummer for the Heartbreakers, and of course many other Clapton before that, and Average White Band and so on. He had a studio in Burbank. I came out to produce someone, and I did it there. And Steve there was an open room in his studio, and he only had one partner. And I kind of went, "What are you doing in that open room?" And he said, "I thought you'd never ask." And a couple months later, I packed up my studio and came out. Uh, and So the transition for me was very natural. I'd wanted to be here. I knew I should be here for a long time. The scene in New York. New York got so hard. It got so expensive to do anything.
Yeah.
My studio, I started having for the first time in years trouble with neighbors. It You couldn't go anywhere anymore. Trying to bring equipment to another studio. It just got really, I think, really tough. And a lot of the work that had been so plentiful in the 70s and 80s was really drying up. So the Broadway shows that I used to do, there were less of those. The jingles, there weren't so many jingles. The records were all being made in LA, or a lot of them. So it was a natural progression for me. And I'd had enough. Grew up in New York. I lived in Colorado. I had a band there for years. And I was kind of ready to not be scraping ice off of my
Exactly.
car.
That's that's how was when I left Connecticut. I made sure I went to see all the museums. I saw all the states. I said, okay, this is it. I'm gonna be in Los Angeles and do my stuff. And I was at the radio station, so I was at Power 106. First started in what was that, 1987, and then so we were the first multicultural radio show, and we ended up beating Kiss FM, where Rick Dees was at that point, and that
Oh,
was
yeah.
a huge thing for us because we were playing things like Cameo, and then we would go back and play. We would play something rock, and we played like the Fat Boys when they would come out, stuff like that, and it was very, very interesting. And you're right, things were changing, and then people weren't changing with the times because some people don't like to change, but change is inevitable. Either you change with it or you don't adapt, you don't grow.
True.
We got a couple minutes left. Give your social media links so people could reach out to see what you guys are doing.
Well, there's the Immediate Family Band, or immediatefamilyband.com is the website. The Immediate Family on Facebook. The YouTube channel, I think, is called The Immediate Family. StevePostell.com is my YouTube channel, Steve Postell. Because I continue to do stuff outside of the band, and I've got a solo record I'm just waiting till this pandemic's over. It's just sitting in the can. And we're and then I think I think Denny Tedesco has like the Immediate Family film something. He has a site where they're putting information about the documentary. But you can find us. We're not hard to find.
Oh no, I'm not letting you guys get away because I know there's some great history coming out of that, and it's just like the Wrecking Crew. The interviews I did it at a drum store on Melrose, and when I last looked, I think it was like 28,000 views on it. And then occasionally I put it back up because it's a great documentary, but I want people to know the history of a Hal Blaine and who's the woman that was the great bass player who played on all the sessions? Carol, I think.
Carol.
Is it Carol Kay, I think?
Yes. Yes.
Her. I mean, the stuff that she did with the Mama and Papas, those riffs. I want to make sure people know who you guys are. That's my job when it comes to that. So that's why I want to say that.
That's great. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Well, you know what I may do, based on your time, when I have Leland come back to the studio, I may have to see if he wants to drag you, and we'll do our stuff in our small little clean studio if you want, because he loves it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Steve, I want to thank you for your time and everything. And like I said, I will make sure that I push it. And I think I got something set up with Denny. If it's not Friday, it'll probably be next week, even though he's almost
Great.
tinkering with it. I want to make sure I stay on top of that. And as I say with everybody, if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it. I'm Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More. Steve, thank you so much for coming on our thing, and we will see you next week.